Would you please hear this opening prayer and poem as we begin our time together? Bring us, O God, at our last awakening into the house and gate of heaven, to enter that gate and dwell in that house, where there shall be no night nor burning sun, but one equal light, no voice nor silence, but one equal music, no fears nor hopes, but one equal possession, no ends or beginnings, but one equal eternity in the habitation of your glory and dominion, world without end. Amen. And this poem: if I should die before the rest of you, break not a flower nor inscribe a stone, nor when I'm gone speak in a Sunday voice, but be the usual selves that I have known. Weep if you must. Parting is hell. But life goes on, so sing as well. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Hear this reading from Scripture. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful, or arrogant, or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, as we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love.
Though we need to weep your loss, you dwell in that safe place in our hearts where no storm or night or pain can reach you. Your love was like the dawn, brightening over our lives, awakening beneath the dark, a further adventure of color. The sound of your voice found for us a new music that brightened everything. Whatever you unfolded in your gaze, quickened in the joy of its being. You placed smiles like flowers on the altar of our heart. Your mind always sparkled with wonder at things. Though your days here were brief, your spirit was alive, awake, complete. We looked toward each other no longer from the old distance of our names. Now you dwell inside the rhythm of breath, as close to us as we are to ourselves. Though we cannot see you with outward eyes, we know our soul's gaze is upon your face, smiling back at us from with everything to which we bring our best refinement. Let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find you in presence, beside us when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When orchids brighten the earth, darkest winter has turned to spring. May this dark grief flower with hope in every heart that loves you. May you continue to inspire us to enter each day with a generous heart, to serve the call of courage and love, until we see your beautiful face again in that land where there is no more separation, where all tears will be wiped from our mind, and where we will never lose you again.
When I got the call to go to Gayland's room, I was not exactly sure what I was walking into. Glancing at the medical chart, I knew he'd been through a lot over the past few hours. I knew that the family had likely been through a lot with him over those past hours. And I knew that his body was dying. I glanced in that little box that we see as chaplains, that one that says religious preference, and I saw that it said none. So I walked in open and curious. Often when that box for religion is filled with none, I get a little nervous that the entrance of the chaplain might actually be invasive or off-putting, might even have negative connotations. I have visions of folks who has found, as many of us have found, organized faith to be pushy and all too often wounding. My intention was to do my best not to get in the way, but to help encourage and to help important family conversations as they began to love one another, to grieve together, and as they nurtured each other through their presence together while both celebrating and mourning the person, Gayland, that they loved. When I walked in, Jan was a little bit at a place, a hump in the road. This was a difficult road that the family was traveling. And Lauren and the whole family, they were kind of busy doing stuff, but not really having the time to take it all in. So we took time together because this was a difficult journey. We all knew that he had been sick, but he had pulled through and was doing quite well. I saw the pictures of him just weeks before doing really well. But that day, all knew that his body was just done. The cancer, the lung issues, well, they had done their damage. In spite of that, and though he had slipped into a deep sleep, I learned just how much fun this man was, though. I learned from everyone in the room what a great man he was. And according to Lauren, his best pastime was messing with people. This was his mode of operation, and we laughed about it. But sometimes that can sting, and especially when it's stinging because of physical death. He actually turned pale before our eyes, and that hurts. You see, death messes with us too. It seeks to separate us from our loved ones. It tends to make us question our relationships to each other, to our own spirits, and to God. In that moment of struggle, though Gayland was not backing down, not spiritually, he was not backing down. The family surrounded him, and his presence was still holding everyone together in ways that they could not even imagine. He continued to be the shepherd that he was. Even in death, he was a shepherd. This was Gayland's way. To tell stories, to laugh, to cry, just to be together no matter what. And this kind of love messes with death. As we talked, Gayland's exit from church many years back, this was kind of random, and it turned out that I understood completely. Even though I was the chaplain on call, it was an amazing thing that our faith met in such unique and wonderful ways. And I put that right up to Gayland's shepherding. So there was one thing that we all agreed on, is that that day did not just happen. So I offered to help however I could. And this is how Gayland somehow brought me to his life and into your lives. For that, I find blessing. The scripture we read about love from Corinthians is most often read at weddings. You've probably heard it at weddings. People have framed it to be about couples who are getting married. But it's really about community. It's really about family. It's really about a group of people when that scripture was written who had faced trials and tribulations in first century Rome. It was about endurance through difficult times. And it's about the power of love to get us all through what life and death will bring. It's about what comes important, what becomes our growth pattern from childhood to adulthood, and as we move through our lives and into the lives of others. Love is an empty word unless we live it and we die it and we shepherd it and we love one another. Our time together did get me into a beautiful family and got me into knowing Gayland, who was not speaking in the moment, but I understood him to be as present in that room as you and I are in this room right now, in this beautiful backyard right now. What I discovered is a family who didn't dwell in death, but were seeking life together and seeking love together. The air was alive with Gayland, and his spirit was there, and it is here too. This is the light of God, somehow shining even through darkness. And that's the power of pure love. That time there in ICU was holy, sacred, one that I know changed lives. It changed this family's life forever, and it changed my life. And tonight, it will change your life as you share love and memories. And there are many, many memories to be shared. And they're printed in your bulletin, and you've spoken many together, and we've shared them, and they're in a big notebook. And keep sharing them on the piece of paper you have, because that's what love does. It helps us share. Let Gayland keep gathering you and guiding you toward it. The shape of Gayland's life also mirrors a story that happened right after Easter in a scripture lesson about the walk to Emmaus. It tells how Jesus' disciples were walking on the road with deep sadness because they didn't know he was resurrected. They found that they were sad walking along the road, missing their rabbi, their shepherd. They thought their friend was gone. So they met a stranger on the road who asked them why they were sad. They had all kinds of conversation, and they invited the stranger to dinner. And at that dinner, it was by breaking bread and pouring a glass that they realized he was alive amongst them. Throughout your time together tonight, I know that this would be the kind of spirituality you and Gayland would practice together. So practice it tonight. It's that kind of encounter, the fellowship of daily life, where Gayland is present completely in the midst of that, and it fed his soul and still feeds your soul, and your soul can be poured out in love so that his may continue. So it's this shape of our everyday lives. It's this shape of our breaking bread and doing the ordinary things that remind us to encounter one another in love, and that we're here in each other's midst, and those who have gone before us are still here in our midst. So tonight we see Gayland, and here in this place we encounter the shape of our faith, the shape of our hope, and it's all made possible by love. Amen.
I guess that I have known Gayland longer than the majority of you here sitting tonight. We grew up in Fort Worth. We went to separate schools. He went to Northside. I went to Eastern Hills. And you have to know that Gayland was a big deal. He was a jock. He was a football player. He was voted most handsome, and from the pictures, we all know why. He was hot. We had a few dates in high school. He took me to some of his high school functions. I met a lot of his friends. And through that friendship, my first college roommate was a girlfriend of his from Northside High School. But then I lost touch with Gayland, and I always wondered what happened to him. So in 1995, I was sitting at my desk. I have a travel company, for those of you who don't know, and my assistant came in and said, "There's someone in the lobby. He won't give me his name, and he says he has to see you right away." And I said, "Okay, I'm curious." So I walked out to the lobby, and there stood Gayland Wardell. And he said, "I saw you on TV last night, and I just had to see for myself if it was Sharon Elliott, who I knew in high school." Well, of course it was. So we went back to my office. We talked for over an hour, and of course, he pried me with question after question after question, because we all know when Gayland needed something from you, he would ask until he got all the information in that little filing cabinet in his brain. Then he told me about his family. And when he talked about Jan, it was almost reverent. It's like he couldn't believe he had gotten that lucky. So he left my office, but before he did, he said, I want to get your phone numbers. We need to meet Jan. I want you to meet her. So I'm going to call you. Never heard from him. So a month later, I'm sitting in my office, or at my house on a Saturday afternoon, and I get a phone call. What are you doing? Now, isn't that always the way he started his phone conversations? What are you doing? I said, well, first of all, who is this? And he said, this is Gayland. What are you doing? And I said, well, I'm working. He said, I need help. I said, okay. He said, I'm shopping for Jan for Christmas. I need help. And so I didn't have a life back then, so I jumped in the car and went to North Park. And he was in this boutique, and he had all these outfits lined up, all combined. And I thought, God, he really has good taste. Except for one blouse, which was hideous. And I said, Gayland, I haven't even met Jan yet, and I'm sure she would not like that. So finally got to meet Jan. We became fast friends, and a year later, I met Bill. And Bill and I started dating, and I was to go with one of my groups to Cancun, and Gayland and Jan went, and Jess Coker went, and Bill went. We all went down to Cancun. We had a great time. But Gayland became Big Brother. And so Big Brother kept asking me, are you sure you want to do this? You've just gotten your kids off to college. You're going to take on stepchildren. Are you sure you want to do this? And I said, yes, I'm sure. So when Gayland had that comfort level, he and Bill became best friends. And because of that, we have had so many adventures together. Trips, dining. Every time we'd have a party, Gayland would bring his famous margaritas, and Jan would bring those stellar dips and pies. And Gayland was always the life of the party because he was bigger than life. And he never talked about himself. He always wanted to know everything about you. And he would ask questions until he got everything he wanted. And he always had an opinion, didn't he? So we would go out to dinner, and the four of us would be having dinner, and Gayland and Bill would be fighting over who knew the best Mexican, Italian, Chinese. They would spar over that. At every dinner, Jan and I would just sit around and shake our heads and say, can this really be happening? They're fighting over lasagna and egg rolls. So about a year ago, and we all knew Gayland was very sick. We just didn't know how sick he was. He decided he was going to have all of his golf buddies get together for lunch every Thursday. So Bill came home and told me this story. I said, okay, let me get this straight. A bunch of old farts are going to get together every Thursday to have lunch. So thus became the OFL, the Old Farts Lunch Club. And those guys spent their whole week planning around Thursday. And they loved it. And they would always fight over who had the best restaurant, who was going to have the next restaurant. But they really did enjoy that time together. And I think subconsciously, Gayland wanted to keep his friends really close. Now, there's no question that Gayland was the consummate friend. If he cared about you, he would have done anything for you. But you have to know that his family was his life. He loved Jan and his kids and his grandkids with a fierceness that you rarely see. And I always admired him for that. We have lost a friend, a husband, a big brother, a dad and a granddad. And now we have him only in our memories. But count on this. He has already been to the pearly gates, and he's already told St. Peter that he knows where the best enchiladas are in heaven.
I was very honored and overwhelmed when Jan asked me to speak here today. And as I began to think about what I wanted to talk about, realized that this would be difficult for a lot of reasons. And not just because he's gone, but because it's really impossible to sum up the influence that he's had in my life. So I was struggling for a place to start, and I was talking with my wife, AK, about some of her fondest memories. And she said the thing that I loved most about Gayland was how he and Jan interacted together, and talking about the twinkles in the eyes that they had for each other. And I think that, I thought about it, and that to me was like the perfect way to kind of start this off, because I think we all kind of had twinkly eyes for Gayland. I know I did. And I know that my cousins, my sister did, when we were young growing up, at family events at Christmas time and everything. I mean, Gayland was the show. He was what I looked forward to the most, really. Because as a little kid, he just knew how to connect with you as a little kid, but it was through teasing and wrestling and a lot of juvenile stuff. But he could also treat you like an adult, or relative to your age. And I'll get back to the So I'm trying to think of like my fondest memories as a child of him, but there really isn't anything in particular that stands out. It's more the little things, and I always come back to the simple stuff, like just kind of raising his lip a little bit, or grabbing you by the back of the neck out of nowhere, tickling you, because you never knew when it was coming. And but talking about treating you like an adult, there was one time where we were out at the farm and we were shooting 22s at some cans or something, I don't know, and I hit one from a pretty decent distance, and he was like, "Good shot." He's like, "Bet you $5 you can't do it again." I was like, "Well, I just did it. I'll bet you, old man." So I missed. He's like, "Double or nothing." Sure. I missed again. I think he got into me for like $80 or something, maybe. I was at 13. He made me pay him. But as our relationship evolved, I would say that our gambling did as well. He came out to Tennessee one time to see me play football my senior year, and it was really important to me that he came. And but the deal was, I had sideburns at the time, and he hated them, and was always like, "Let me shave those off. Let me shave those off." And I was like, "No." Well, so he made a deal. He's like, "All right, if I come out, if you lose, I get to shave off your sideburns." Of course, we lost. And the next morning, I come out for breakfast, and he's sitting at the table with the clippers on the table, ready to cut them off. But to go back to how he treated you like an adult, I guess he could relate to you so much at any age because he had been through so much. And I'm sure everyone here has experienced it, because I think he was liked best by those who knew him best. He was so animated, his goofy laugh, the snarl, the wide-eyed nod of approval, like the occasional kind of when he would talk dainty, or dismissive eye rolls, or just simply saying, "What?" His presence was huge, and it was only reinforced when he and Jan and Lauren came out to Tennessee, and we went to see this psychic who supposedly could see people's auras, and the psychic said that Gayland had a fountain coming out of his head. And as Sharon said, he was never short of opinions, particularly restaurants. He had a gift of gab that made him a hell of a salesman. And he was usually spot on with his recommendations, except for that time that he recommended the whole family stay at the La Quinta in Knoxville. But, I know that if this were a party and he was here, and maybe you weren't here and he was talking to you about it tomorrow, you would wish that you were there because he could tell you about it in a way that made you want to be there with him all the time. And he was the life of the party. And I sure wish he was here now.
My name is Jess Coker. I've known Gayland for probably about 20 years. He was quite an influence in my life, as he was probably in everybody here. Somebody asked me one time if I knew Gayland Wardell. I said, yeah, I can sum that up in 2 sentences. He was a legend in his own mind. He was a rumor in his own time. When Jan asked me to be part of this celebration of Gayland's life, I really wanted to do something special. And the preacher said, if you get a little emotional, just press your thumb nail into your finger. Well, I've got it pressed into all 4 of my fingers. But I wrote a poem for Gayland. I don't profess to be a poet, and I don't know how good it's going to be, but Gayland's listening, and he knows it came from the heart. A farewell to Gayland, my pods. Pods is a term that golfers know. It means friend and pal, but never foe. You only use it with a select few, with the friends you trust who are tried and true. When God made Gayland, he had a plan. In 1945 is when his journey began. To Willie Mae and Morrison, this baby came. So proud they were as they gave him a name. Ronald Gayland was the name they chose, and from the beginning, a young man rose. Over the years, he came to see that there was more to life, and he found the key. The key was simple if understood. Remember the little engine that thought he could? The secret of happiness, it's bound to be true. Gayland had his cake, and he ate it too. Gayland was married early in life. 2 children were born with his first wife. Ron and Jenny were the names they chose. 2 great kids, as the story goes. As Gayland made his way through the journey of life, many roads he would travel to find a great wife. Along came Jan, who caught Gayland's eye. Her beauty and charm made Gayland sigh. They began their journey as Gayland made Jan his wife, a marriage forever, a partner to live a great life. Throughout the years, their love was rich and true. With a daughter and a plan, their love just grew and grew. They had a daughter named Lauren, so small and sweet. This child began the family that Gayland and Jan would greet. As Gayland grew older, a lot of friends were made. These friends would last a lifetime, a game he so well played. El Dorado 94 is where our friendship began. In Mexico with Sharon Carr, one of our great friends. All the great times we had throughout the years, Mark Hoffman and Tony Colombo were some of our peers. Throughout the years and the friendships we shared, my friendship with Gayland was beyond compare. Gayland's time on earth is now complete. He now has new horizons that he will surely meet. Thank you, Gayland, for being our friend as you created a bond that will never end. I hold something in my heart that is very true. It's a respect and admiration that I have for you. And as we approach life's twilight time, I can assure you that you will find that there's one thing that will be a sure bet. Gayland will always be my pods, and Jan my podsette. As our life goes on, we will never forget that giant of a man that we all met. In a lasting tribute, we will all say how grateful we were that we had our day. So we'll all lift up our glasses and we'll make a toast to one of the people we love the most. To Gayland Wardell, I raise my glass. Sleep in peace, my friend. Your legacy will always last.
Thank you, Jan, for the honor of being able to speak today. I dearly loved Gayland, and we all did. I started in the family with the Hunts in 1977, and with each visit out here from the eastern coast, we lived in Virginia and North Carolina, eventually Tennessee. We loved to spend a little extra time in Dallas when we came out because we could get to visit with Jan and Gayland and see some things in town and go to a recommended restaurant and all those things. Gayland liked to pick my brain a bit. I was in med school and residency, and so Gayland seemed pretty well read and fairly intellectual and really very bright and was impressive that way. And we kind of bonded at some ways that I think maybe were not always like everybody else's, fun and games and all that stuff. We would have some serious talks, but we had a lot of fun with it. And I have a number of fun things to think about. When I was thinking of a word for Gayland, the first word that came to my mind was playful, because he was so playful. That's too complex a word. Fun was a much better word for him. He's just fun. Just fun. Simple and great word. We were preparing to go skiing in Telluride, as we often did with friends. And I get a phone call from Gayland. And thanks to Sharon Carr, he and Jan were planning to go as tour hosts to China. And Gayland called me on the phone and said that Jan just wasn't sure she wanted to go to China. And of all the people he could have picked to go with him as a tour host, he honored me with that request. Thank you, Sharon, for that wonderful trip. But I got studying about it. So, of course, I had to read about the history of China. That's not something that I really got in school. So I got history books on China, and I, by golly, was going to know what I was seeing when I was in China and was going to be a tour host. Little did I know that it was so well orchestrated and so many people in China know so much more about their own history. But what began to happen was the local guides, and especially the national guides, gravitated to us, probably mostly to Gayland, but would come back and we would sit up at night in his room and discuss their lives and what it had been like to escape what they had been through under Mao and all those things. So again, some very deep conversations and very moving conversations, but that is not the essence of Gayland. The essence of Gayland is fun. And here's a big blonde-headed guy in China, and we would go out on the streets, and it just was like, here they come. Not to me, but to him. Here they would come. We had college girls come up to us, and they would go, can we practice our English? And Gayland would, of course, say, sure, and he would say, but you speak very well. We need to teach you other words. Do you know the word ain't? And so he would begin to give them a course in Texas English, which was just delightful. But one of the special memories I have of him and that magnetism that he had was we went out to see the Great Wall of China. And on the way back, the national tour guide said, I'd like the bus driver to take a little detour over here. And we went off into a village. In this village, there was a shale cliff of sorts, and each of the families had dug holes, little short caves, into the shale, and those were their homes. And they have a community cook pot because it's hard to scrounge up twigs. So they have one wok in town that they've got hot. And this is seeing how the rural Chinese live. And contrast that with us. And we get off the bus, and what happens? Little kids start running up to Gayland, and he starts that mischievous, pesky, teasing, pinching, noogies. It's got the whole village surrounding him. It just turned into it was a Gayland party. And it's so spontaneous. And that memory was probably the best and the essence of Gayland. He was fun.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here. I think it turned into a beautiful night, and I think that's no coincidence that my dad might have something to do with it. I'm up here today because my dad asked me to speak for him. He had always called me almost daily, and more recently, he wasn't as clear-thinking as he has been. About 3 weeks ago, I called him to check in while I was making dinner, and I could tell that he was completely present in himself. I took the opportunity to say some things that I thought were important. I'm already breaking my promise. You're going to hear it in a second. I always knew we had a great relationship. I didn't have any regrets with my dad ever. But I wanted to confirm it. And in this moment that I knew that he was clear thinking, I said, Dad, I know I love you, and I know you love me. I just want to make sure that we're good in case this thing doesn't go right. And he said, are you talking about when I'm going to croak? And I said, Dad, stop. I said, listen. And he said, listen, when that time comes, I want you up there talking about me. And you're not going to cry because you're a Wardell. I told him that was a really tall order, but he said I would have gotten all of my crying out by then. Well, here I am. I knew I wanted to be up here for him, and it's appropriate because he's the person that taught me how to speak publicly when I was only in the 5th grade. When I was running for vice president of the student council at Harrington Elementary School, my parents thought that was so cool. Of course, my dad helped me write my speech, which I had to give to the entire student body. He had me promise all of these outlandish things like Coca-Cola in the water fountains, all-day recess, no homework. And then he told me to transition to what I was really going to do by saying emphatically, now seriously, folks. He had me rehearse over and over again with special pauses and emphasis that he choreographed. By the time I got up there to give the speech, I had the confidence to do just as he had taught me. I always believed in myself and that I could do anything. I attribute this to my mom and my dad. My dad never felt threatened because my mom was successful in her own right. In fact, he was proud. And he empowered me to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. I always felt equal. I now know that others saw how special our relationship was. The texts and emails from people since his passing have shown me how obvious it is to everyone around me. Even people who met him only once and saw us together knew that. Last week, many childhood friends wrote to me with specific memories of my dad. People weren't just sorry for my loss, it was their loss too. One in particular, she said she remembered so clearly his big Texas heart. And then she told me a story about one night when she spent the night with me and how at the dinner table, my dad wanted to know what her goals in life were. We were 12. She said that she'd never thought about goals until that night. Well, that was my dad. He definitely made people think about the important things. He was my proudest supporter. He was the person who gave me the ability to go anywhere and talk to anyone and feel the joy in any situation. Sometimes when I get a little too exuberant, Steve says to me, okay, Gayland. I'm proud of that trait, and I'm thankful that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I'm so fortunate to have a little both of my parents in my makeup. Even though they were so different from each other, I always knew my parents were a perfect match. Until recently, I didn't quite realize the depth of their love. They were indeed soulmates. As my cousin Dakin wrote, my dad gave love blindly, and he saw the value in each of us. On the Wednesday before he died, my mom wanted all of us to be at the hospital. My brother, sister, and I, my mom, my daughter, Ava, we were with him in his room together. After everyone left, he turned to me and told me how great it was to see us all together. It made him feel so good. I know he'd be happy that we're all together here today, celebrating his love for us. My 6-year-old Axel couldn't visit my dad in the hospital because he was too young. You have to be 12 to visit. When he was admitted back into the hospital, I had questioned why my dad's doctors released him to the rehab facility. I just didn't understand why he went if he was so sick. But the one night he stayed there, Ava, Axel, Steve, and I all went to go see him. In retrospect, I feel like God sent him there so that my dad and Axel could be together. Axel got up in the bed with him. They talked about soccer and sports, just like they always did. It was a really special night. My kids were so important to him. He was their proudest and loudest supporter, too. I sent many of you an email on my dad's last day. The first several paragraphs poured out of me. When I wrote that I expected to see him in my dreams, tonight and forevermore, I felt like that was also a tall order. In my last moments alone with him, on his last day, I told him, you better give me something good. I said, I expect flashing lights. I need to know you're here with me. That night, I fell asleep so easily, and he did what I asked. In my dream, he was sitting on the edge of the bed in his last hospital room. He was facing the door with his feet on the ground, sitting how he always sat. He was still wearing that awful yellow gown, but he was calmly taking off all of the wires and cords and monitors, and he motioned for me to come over here. He said, "Come here." He started telling me to open my eyes, and I kept saying no because I didn't want to leave him or the dream. But he insisted, "Open your eyes." And I did what he said, and in the darkness of my room, I knew he was there. He has always been here, and he still is. I believe that is his gift to me. We all know my dad is not a traditional guy, and this is not a traditional funeral. In fact, this is not a funeral at all. As I was driving to the hospital on his last day, I visualized this moment when we would all be here in my backyard, celebrating my dad, his life, and his legacy. This is the kind of evening he would want. He hated wearing a suit, he hated wearing a tie, but he loved being with friends, eating and drinking, and he loved music. Tonight, as we're doing what he loved, eating and drinking, being with friends, we will be listening to music that my husband Steve put together for my dad's 70th birthday last year. So please feel the freedom to celebrate him instead of mourn him tonight. Not everyone gets a dad as big as Texas. It seems appropriate that he was born here and on the 4th of July. I know we'll all think of him many times and in many situations, but especially when we're celebrating. When the day is full of fun and laughter and the sky is full of fireworks, my dad is with us.
Now hear this benediction. Into your hands, God, we commit to your fold a lamb of your own flock, a child of your own redeeming. Receive him and us into the arms of your mercy, into blessed rest and peace, into the glorious company of saints here and in the ever after. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and the rains fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Amen. As the string quartet continues to play, we're going to do exactly what we should do this night and gather around the pool for a toast. So let us be dismissed to enjoy this night of celebration.
Hello, here we go. Well, Jan and I have had a chance to talk a few times in the last few weeks, and I told her I was prepared to speak a lot longer, but that I would go ahead and cut it down. So I got just a few thoughts and memories of Gayland, and I just wanted to let y'all in on a few of them. Oh, doggone! That's not how that's supposed to go. I want to thank Jan and the family for allowing us all the opportunity to celebrate the life of Gayland with them. When I first saw the Evite, I thought, Ronald? I know if I'd ever called him by Ronald, he would have just given me that look. What the hell are you talking about? He was Gayland from start to finish. If ever there was a guy that was Texan through and through, it was him. I know that each one of us has a Gayland story, how you met, something funny he did, a positive impression he left, or his ability to make you special, feel special. I've been thinking about all the good times we have shared over the years. Tonight is a great opportunity for all of us to share in his memory, wit, and humor. Gayland made his entrance into my life almost 39 years ago. Little did I know, pinch that thumb, little did I know at the time what a great guy, wonderful friend, and a mentor he would become to me. Over the years, we've had the opportunity to watch our families grow, and they have families of their own. While gone physically, his spirit lives on in all of us. If he were here, he'd be upset that we were making such a fuss over him, but he'd think it was sweet. I'm sure he's already busy in his new digs telling whoever will listen to him what to do. Please join me in raising a glass in the honor of the memory of the one and only Ronald Gayland Wardell.
Here. Cheers. You did good. Really great.
Pinching my thumb.
It was perfect. You were the perfect one to deliver the toast.
I feel like
yeah, just grab it. Yeah.
I need to get a small one.
I love it.
So just pretend like you're getting one.
Okay, so our friends buy a lake house and they invite several couples to stay at the lake house, and we are sharing a room with Jan and Gayland. So we're on the bed and they're on a mattress in the same room.
An inflatable mattress in the same room.
And Gayland snores so loud like a freight train.
Louder than a freight train.
And we could not sleep. So we're laughing and laughing, and finally we get up. We're gonna go in the den.
And Gayland's not waking up.
Oh, and Jan's dead asleep.
Yeah.
That lulls her to sleep.
We can't figure out how she can sleep with that noise going on, but yes.
So we get up and we go into the den on an inflatable mattress on the tile floor. Except that there was a leak in it, so we were on the tile floor with.
When we woke up in the morning, we were flat on the tile floor.
And we got about an hour and a half.
Yeah, and Gayland and Jan walk out the next morning
They're
and
all
go,
refreshed.
Where were you guys? Yeah, obviously, Gayland, you snore like a freight train. We couldn't stay in the same room with you, so we left.
anyway, that's our best Gayland story.
That's our best
because
Gayland story.
It was
It's the friendliest Gayland story we can tell.
it was awesome, and
But
we love him.
We love you, Gayland. Thank you very much.
99 games.
Yeah, 99 games. He introduced us to 99.
And so many friends, tons of friends. that
Love
you've
you
introduced
dearly.
us to.
Love Jan and the family. Love you dearly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gayland was my cousin. His mother was my dad's sister. And the thing that really sticks with me was that he was voted the most handsome fellow in high school. Plus, he also was a football player, as we all found out. And he wore contact lens. And he lost one of his lens. And he and two other players were down on the ground looking for that lens. And I think it was the Star-Telegram, took his picture. And so it made the paper, and they did find his lens, so it was really surprising. And when he called me, or he'd text me, he'd say, Aunt Carrie, well, that was my mother's name, but I'm just as ornery as he was, or she, even my mother, and he'd always say, what orneriness are you up to now? So we always had a lot of fun around him. Thank you.
So one of my fondest memories of Gayland is when he came out to my lake house, he and Jan, and we had a full day of time on the lake, a lot of partying, a lot of fun, and we got back with the small group that was staying at the house, and Gayland and his not ready to be done with the party style said, I need to make some margaritas. And he proceeded to set up his blender and all his ingredients, but he forgot to do one thing, and that was tighten the bottom on the blender. And this was a brand new lake house. 5 minutes later, we have margaritas spraying all over the kitchen. And he said, oh, it's okay, we'll clean it up. He said, but I'll put the bottom on and make some more. You're gonna cut, right? Okay, so my second story is that night, and I think you might have heard a story previously about his snoring and his roommates having to leave the room. So after his roommates had to sleep on the floor, the next day he came out and he said, I think you have fleas. And so we affectionately named that room the Flea Farm after Gayland.
We're on a golf trip. Going to Vegas. It's a Tony Colombo golf trip, and Tony Colombo's a pretty cheap guy. Not really, but he made a cheap trip, and he put us into the Frontier Hotel, which was going to be destroyed in 6 months. But he put us into that hotel because Tony likes to chase girls, right? And he's a great dancer, so there's gillies attached to the hotel, so that's where we go in. So we go in, we check into the room, and I put my luggage on the bed, and I look up, and all of a sudden there's 2 or 3 roaches climbing on the walls. And I looked down at the carpet, and if I'd taken my shoes off, I would have stuck to the carpet. It was so disgusting. So I didn't open up my bag. I got out of the room, I got a cab, and I went over and I got a room at the Wynn Hotel. And the Wynn upgraded me to a suite. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful suite. So Gayland calls me and says, we're going to go down, we're going to have a drink and meet everybody. I said, well, okay, well, I'm over here at the Wynn. He said, what? You can't be at the Wynn. What do you mean? And I told him the story, and he said, you princess, you. He said, I can't believe you did that. So next thing I know, here comes Gayland with his bags, and he's moving into my room. Didn't even tell me. He knocks on the door with his bag, and he says, I'm here. And so, you know, I said, okay, Gayland, that's fine. You go ahead, and you know. And then about 30 minutes later, it's probably, no, what happened? We went down, we had a few drinks, we gambled a little bit, and we come back up to the room, and I go to the bathroom, and next thing I know, I look around, and here's Gayland Gayland's going in and he's going into my bed. He's in my bed. And he says, I said, Gayland, what the hell are you doing? He says, well, come on, darling, we'll sleep here together. I said, let me tell you something, bud. I love you to death like a brother, but we ain't sleeping together. So I made him get up, and he had to sleep on the couch for 2 days. It was a blast. Anyway, that's the story.
My name's Rick Soatsball. Couple stories about Gayland. I guess the first thing that I do remember is we're playing golf, and he's very slow at golf, and he's got his quirks about golf, and we're sitting there and we're playing, and all of a sudden I get back in the cart and he turns to me and he says, you're just ignorant. And I never had anybody call me ignorant, and so I really didn't know what to say, but I turned and looked at him with a grin, and when I looked at him I knew what was in his mind. He really meant it. And I thought, and ever since that day we've become the best of friends. Of course, we played golf all the time and always had our Thursday lunches together. But I guess the other thing I must say, that he was such a strong guy. He was very strong. And you know, me being a portly guy, fat, we would kind of go up against each other a lot. So he used to call me, and I know I'm going to get a big ribbing about this. I don't want this over the internet or anything like that, but he used to call me his little muffin. And then we'd go to wrestling and, you know, pinching and popping each other and just giggling and having a good time. And I tell you, that's what I remember about Gayland, because if Gayland came up and grabbed a hold of you, you knew somebody had grabbed a hold of you, because it hurt. But he was the kind of guy that, he's my brother. He was a brother to me. And I'm gonna miss him, and I know everybody else is gonna miss him. But you know, the other day I was sitting on my back patio, and I was just thinking about having a conversation with him. And we were talking, and it was really interesting. I just kind of felt like he was still there. And if anybody is going to come back and tell you something about what's going on up there, it's going to be Gayland. That's what I need everybody to know. Gayland will definitely let you know.
Outlaw number 1.
Outlaw number 2, Gayland, we're looking for you. Oh, we're going to miss you, something awful.
Buddy,
great guy.
The memories will live on and on. We'll miss you.
We do already. It was a big blow. It's going to be hard to get over it. Never will, probably fully. And I really appreciate all you did for us over the years, especially my little special trip to China. Thanks, guys.
In our hearts forever. Love you.
Hey, Jan, SL and Phyllis here. Really honored being here tonight in memory of Gayland. Gayland did a lot to introduce me and to the 7 or 8 guys in the Thursday lunch group. He made my golf game better. He taught me how to go to different restaurants, although I still eat dinner at 5:30 in the evening. I can't wait till 8:30 like you guys do. But we're going to miss him, and I still remember the day that he came up behind me when me and my buddies were checking you out at the Einstein Bagel Joint, thinking how hot you were and still are. And Gayland comes up behind us and says, she is hot, isn't she? And we said, yeah. And Gayland said, that's my wife, leave her alone. We're going to miss him. Good luck to you and your family. If there's anything you need, you've got my email. Call me. Love you. Bye.
Well, Gayland was actually my uncle, and so I've known him ever since I was born. And he was only 4 or 5 years older than me. So our relationship was more like big brother, little brother, with all the connotations that go along with that. But as I got older, I realized that Gayland was bigger than life. And so there was a lot of things that was great about him that I should try to copy in my life. His joy of life, for one thing. And so I've thought of that many times is, you know, go out and meet people, have fun, like Gayland did.
Hi guys, Jan, Lauren, Jenny, Robin. I I loved your dad. Jan, you had a wonderful husband. I'm so really glad that Gayland was in my life and that I got to know him. And you know, I didn't have to call on him very often, but when I did, he was there. And he always had a kind word. And yes, he was a big teaser, but that was part of his charm. So I say it again, I loved him very much.
Gayland, we miss you, and we know you're actually hanging out around here, and honestly you are. And I have the best memories of you, and one of them being at the soccer field when we were watching Axel. All good, all fun and laughter. You will be missed, or you're already missed big time. So please stay around a little bit and give us your good energy that you gave to us earlier. Thank you.
I know how hard Ava worked on these cupcakes, so I'm sure they're going to be fabulous. And they look beautiful. I can't wait to taste it, but I don't want to be on camera eating. But I'm very proud of her for doing it. I know it took a long time. Regarding Gayland, I really loved him and his personality, and he was so huge, life of the party, and we'll miss him, and it's going to be sad not seeing him anymore, but it was great meeting him, and I was glad to have been part of his life and him being part of my life, particularly since I'm really good friends with him.
Anthony shared with me this evening the two biggest faux pas that I did with Gayland. He probably had more with me, but these two happened with him. And go.
First, when he was cooking, we had an apartment, Gayland and I did. He was dating Jan, I was dating Carol.
In the early
time,
70s.
Early 70s. So Gayland had cooked fish, so he had a skillet. He told Carol, wipe the skillet out. Well, he assumed, which you know what that'll do, that she knew to wipe it out with a paper towel. Well, she grabbed a linen napkin and wiped it out. He went bananas.
Well, he said wipe it out, and I wiped it out. He probably did lecture me. He was good at that.
And
Very good at lecturing.
The other one, she was babysitting for Lauren.
She was a little baby thing.
Little baby. And phone rang or something, and she had a hot pan in her hand. Just sat it on the Formica. It melted like Vesuvius.
It melted all right. So I was in trouble for that too. But I have to say, whenever I'd see Gayland, he would tease like crazy. But I always knew, all through these years even, that if I ever really needed anything, ever, I could go to him if I didn't see him for a year, 2 or 3. Jan's the same way. And I don't see Lauren because it's just that closeness. I love it. Love you guys.
Well, you know me. You've only known me for 51 years, and
what
I
a
really
specimen.
miss him. And he was the best. He was the best. I met him when I was 18. He molded me out of that small piece of clay to what I am today. And I thank you. Love you, pal. You too, Belle. You too, Lauren.
Gayland, I'll always remember you. I'll never forget the times that you called and would say, "What are you doing?" I'd say, "I'm watching TV," and you would say, "You ignorant shit." So I'll never forget those words. I love you. Thanks.
Action. Is it on now?
Yeah. It's on.
We love you, Jan.
We love you guys.
Love you.
1, 2, 3.
We
love you, Jan and Lauren.